Thank you. So what I will do with you very quickly, I put you very anecdotically to 8 trends, which, just one question, is who is working for a large industry conglomerate or any larger company? Just raise your hand. Is there anybody over here? So it's the minority. Which is a startup and an entrepreneur who just created this company? And what about the 80% sitting here? Consultants? Bankers? Okay. Well, you know, whatever it is, first big trend, and you may smile how simple that is, tech rules. Tech is probably the most differentiating factor in the future for everything you do, whether it's Turkcell, whether it's a startup in retail, it doesn't really matter. And I'll tell you a little bit 2 things which happen. We call this Industry 4.0. We lost retail to the US. Any B2C business, it's mostly been done a bit better in the US. However, on the B2B side, whether it's Turkey, whether it's Europe, we still have a huge and bright future and opportunity in front of us. And that means enabling technology. They're making processes more efficient, smart factories, the software, the underlying, the data, whatever you can think. And I tell you a little bit, I give you an example, which you see right behind me. It's the second largest global agriculture company which I was asked to talk to. It's called Klaas, it's in Germany. 10 years ago, when a farmer went to them, they said, "Can I have a lawnmower with a service contract?" 10 years later, actually today, the same person went to university and asked the same salesperson, "I'm having a piece of land with 100 hectares of wheat. Which product or which service do you have to give me 2% more efficiency of my harvest?" So I don't, whether you see the difference of quality of customers. Our customers will fundamentally change and ask you different questions in the future. And there's another good trend which you see about this company, because they have manufactured long metal products on cars. So that's basically a harvest machine. Now it's a satellite company, it's a software company, it's an operational research company. So it's a completely different picture. So the conversion from standard industry to a new harvesting machine is probably the tribute of digitalization. And this is where all the startups in the future will come in. They make the enablement, they help them to actually get there. The second biggest trend, and that's also, it's not really surprising you, it's mobile. And it's mobile everywhere. And we've heard a lot over the last day over here about Google, about search engine optimization, SEO, anything which was related to that. Let me put it like this. I think in the future, and what's happening now, we will be having more and more mobile-only products. And the reason for that is that globally, we will replace laptop in the future for mobile devices. So your software engineers will have a different thinking than the last 10 years in the future, because they will only think about the small screen in the future and see how's the functionality. We have 22 sensors in a mobile phone. We have 220 sensors in a car. So that's a little bit where devices is changing. And I give you another, for me, the most striking example of what's happening actually. Everybody talks still about Google, gathering data whatsoever. They actually should talk about social media, about Facebook. In 2012, as you remember, they went public, or they filed their IPO. They had zippo mobile sales. Look at this today. This is 2/3 mobile sales. This is probably the biggest and fastest growth the company has seen in a segment which they didn't have at the time of the IPO. So what I'm trying to say is, if you want to market your products, whether you're an industry, group, a startup, or whatever, it's mobile. It's mobile advertising. It's mobile reach, which will be decisive in the future. And trust me, I was talking about 600 industry leaders last week in Berlin. including governmental. Of those 600, 7 people have ever been on social media. So you get a glimpse what's actually happening over there. The third trend, which I'm born 68, so I'm an old guy for this industry. The problem with that is that I really hate sharing and collaboration. I hate that. I don't want to give my apartment to somebody. I have my CDs, which I have sorted by color. So I feel that very alienating. However, what's happening over there in the sharing and collaboration industry is that the notion of ownership is completely changing. We don't believe that we have to physically own products, services, goods whatsoever. And that's a scary thought for me. But if you look at the car sharing models, Car2Go, if you look at Airbnb, I don't know whether you have ever expected to be that a very successful company. If you look at Dress Coded, it's actually dresses for rent for a night. Works perfectly all over Europe. We have thousands of models like this. And basically, I give you an example which I'm still surprised how value creation works. If you look at WeWork, which is based in New York but goes global in 22 countries at the moment, it's co-working places, it's sharing office. And the company, when I looked at it the first time in December 2014 in New York, where I met the CEO, was $5 billion valued, I think, with a 25 million financing round. Last month, it was 10 billion with a 100 million financing round. It's all about sharing office space and making the ownership of real estate upside down. Digitalization will change real estate massively. And you can take pretty much every ownership area, whatever you want to name, it will be impacted. The fourth one, it's my favorite, and I think if there are quite some entrepreneurs and startups sitting over here, this is the one you should really burn as a tattoo on your arms, on your body. User interface. User interface is probably the most underestimated issue in digitalization. And I'll tell you a little bit about it. User interface basically means, to my understanding, if you have to explain your product and service with a user manual or just another word, you will be out of business within the next 5 years. And I guarantee that for you. If you need to explain it, you're screwed. And I've seen, sorry for saying that, over at the booth is over there, 80% of the products needed to be explained. The user interface was crap, shit. Rethink it, redo your product, redo your front end. It's all too complicated. It's not intuitive. It's a real problem. I tell you a little bit what also user interface means by creating a problem, solving a problem. Look at, Uber. Uber, as a mobility company, is currently talking to Volkswagen, the troubled car maker in Germany. They're basically doing the following. It's like, listen, can you produce on a global platform, it's called the Passat, can you produce an Uber Passat? So in the future, Volkswagen will produce an Uber car, which is made and also secured for person transport. In addition, the largest global insurance company is coming on board and will provide the risk underwriting that this person can actually transport you guys from X to Z. Meaning, Allianz is underwriting that risk. Together, this is an ecosystem between 3 industries that you actually, when you buy a car, in the second you have answered 10 questions to underwrite the risk whether you are capable to drive other people from A to Z, you drive off the lot after you've purchased the car and can actually run your own taxi. If you do this in Turkey, it takes you at least a year. You have to buy a license. You have to go through all this crap and errors and bureaucratic problems. And you have to do this actually in every country. This is user interface. For somebody who wants to drive a limousine or taxi, you buy a new car, You sit in the car, you drive off, and you can have the first order. That's user interface. And I give you my last, it's one of my favorites. Sorry. Back. So, Porsche. Porsche in 1971 was probably the biggest engineering wonder of the world. A race car been produced for the streets. When you look at the dashboard in 71, they had 10 buttons and levelers and switches at the dashboard. And the car was driving around 175 kilometers per hour. 30 years later, 2014, the car had 51 buttons on the dashboard and drove twice as fast. My question is, what went wrong with the engineers at Porsche? Did they lose it? The problem with that is, when you sit in a car is not an automotive anymore, it's a mobile device. And that's what the industry starts to realize. Slowly, but they do. And you can see this in 2015. When you look what Tesla, the cockpit of Tesla, the dashboard, it doesn't really have a button. It's a mobile device. It's a screen, actually there are two screens, which you manage exactly like your mobile phone. That's why you feel comfortable. When you sit in an A1 Audi, you have 320 buttons. You have 2,000 pages of manual of user instructions. I mean, think about this. In nowadays, when you have an iPhone or when you get a TV, there is no, I mean, it's an intuitive product. So something really went wrong, and I tell you for sure that Mercedes, Audi, and whoever is producing cars who will not understand that user interface is the key differentiating factor, they're out of business. And look at 220, and that's kind of an interesting one. 2015, Volvo has, and it's Geely, it's Chinese. It's a Chinese car which has no, which basically took up the subject, we're producing mobile devices on wheels. And you see that over there. That's the only thing which you can see. It's one screen as Tesla. 2020, you see the Porsche design study. They believe 2020, that's the earliest moment they can actually change their cars. It's a problem. And interesting enough, they all do the same because they panic. Porsche, Audi, Mercedes, they panic because they see that their customers, the millennials, completely have lost their interest in their over-engineered to be explained products. User interface, trust me, it's the key to success of your business. I give you another one because user interface is so important, and I give you that to the B2B side. Salesforce IQ before Relate IQ. It's a customer relationship management program. One of the biggest problems for everyone, startup, larger corporates, conglomerate. The problem with that is data integration. How do I get variety of different data sets into my customer relationship program? Mostly that's where most of the project gets stalled, screwed up, and stop. Relate IQ did something incredibly simple, and you see this over there. They said, we just log into the main data platforms, Outlook, Facebook, whatever you could Google, and so on and so forth. So basically, every data set of every employee of that, with that platform is integrated with their data within maximum 5 minutes. And you don't need any IT, you don't need an IT department, you need nobody, you know, any wikis whatsoever. That's user interface. Simple, self-explanatory. Tinder. I'm sure none of you know and use Tinder, but if you would, Tinder solved with user interface one of the fundamental problems of dirty dating. And dirty dating has two issues. One, you don't want your neighbor, your wife, your brother, your sister, your mother to know that you do dirty dating. So it needs to be fast, and you need to be closable and hideable, very simple. And that's great because Tinder, you can swipe left, right, very quick, big advantage. User interface. Secondly, you don't like when people tell you you're ugly. You just don't want that. So Tinder basically made a matching proposition that if you have same interest on Facebook, and then also you have swiped to the right that you like that person, and that matches, it's 100% guarantee that that person actually does like you. So by just using intelligent user interface, which you don't need to explain, they revolutionize the market, which is completely mature. Dating has been done for 10 years before. Hundreds of companies have tried to solve that problem. They made something that just changed the user interface. Incredibly smart. Let me go to the next trend. Content is king. We heard that in the late 90s, for those of you who are as old as I am. For those who are not, AdWords, links in search engine are potentially dead. If you want to reach your audience, whether you are a corporate with a website or a startup who actually does online marketing, content, proprietary content, you will become your own publisher. The reason for that is Google, Panda with their algorithm will pick up proprietary content. That will change the industry of advertising, and we have heard some advertising people and programmatic advertising guys over the last 24 hours over here. It will completely change the world. For me, two examples, Onedio, which you probably know over here, which grew in 3 years to 21 million monthly unique users by using basically Facebook, super sharers, so social media platforms, and it's probably one of the fastest growing content website about to be profitable in the future. Amazing. Same with BuzzFeed, and I give you something which, if I would be the Johan family, if I would be a broadcaster, TV broadcaster in Turkey, I would shit in my pants. As you see over here, BuzzFeed, between the guys between 18 and 34, is the largest TV station in the US before CBS and NBC. TV station. It's a content website which mostly works with video content. Just think of this, how people consume content in the future. And it will happen in Turkey, it will happen in Europe, it will happen pretty much everywhere. And you may say it's a matter of time. Of course it's always a matter of time, but the speed is picking up. Actionable data. Data, I think we all have heard about the buzzwords, big data, whatsoever. Well, if everybody has heard about this, the entire internet data, only 23% is actually used, and 3% is tagged. So it has an attribute that you can actually work with that data, 3%. So we are not even at the beginning to understand what we can do and how we can monetize and how we can profit from data. Secondly, I believe we have lost, let me make the difference between primary data and secondary data. Secondary data is when you put your data in Google and Facebook whatsoever. I think we lost that race to Facebook, Google, and the lookalikes. But what we haven't lost is our access to our machines, our services, our products. Give you one example. Why does a washing machine producer, manufacturer doesn't have a real-time access to his machines? Why doesn't Porsche has a constant access to his engines, to his motor? They don't. Even guys like Amazon with Kindle, you probably have a Kindle. If you have a Kindle with a SIM card, which is installed from AT&T, they are constantly interacting with Amazon. They know where you carry the product, you know what you do with it, they know what you're reading, whatsoever. This is data which will be monetizing. You own it as an entrepreneur, as a corporate, as an industry leader. It's highly important. So access or authorization of primary data will be a future big business. And let me tell you something exciting. We, as an investment bank or as a technology investment bank, invested in Dataminer in the early 2000s. Dataminer is a New York-based company, which is the only company in the world which is allowed to tap into this data stream of Twitter. And what they basically do is they give you real-time predictive news. And the prediction is about 15 minutes in average before anybody else in the world picks it up. And you see this with Charlie Hebdo, the very bad attack in Paris, that basically because of the signals in Twitter, data miner picked it up 15 minutes before the press actually could pick it up and gave that to the police. In Boston, the police is actually using this service by allocating police patrol cars at the certain time of the day where the likelihood is the highest that something is going to happen. So it's an incredible company. It's now valued $1.5 billion. It's growing fast, and now banks are using it, hedge funds are using it, private individual, Homeland Security, the CIA, probably pretty much every intelligence in governmental intelligence agency is probably a client of the company. So it's very interesting what you can do with data, and it's monetizable. Last but not least, digital health is one of our favorite trends in the future. Health is going to become a prominent factor of business, of our doing in the future. And we believe those machines here, the iWatch, any wearables, will basically change the entire way how we handle health in the future. And I give you a little bit of an example. Google is putting $2 billion at the moment in life-enhancing, prolonging technology. And they do this outside in California, offshore, with a huge data center with own electricity, where they try to look into the genetic material and see, is there a correlation between food and prolonging your life? Because they're completely convinced is that if you have functional food, you can become older than before. Secondly, I think how we will have, and you see this over here, at the moment, a lot of you will have wearables, and that's just for you. But in the future, you will combine those wearables with mobile diagnostic devices. Look at Vessel. You can put any food, liquid, beverage in there, and this sends it to your iPhone what you're actually drinking. How many calories, how many proteins, salt, nutrition, and so on and so forth. And that goes that far in the future that you will have a supplement, like an Nespresso machine in the morning, depending on the data which is submitted to your doctor, to your health provider, you will get certain supplements to feel better, to feel more healthy in the future. Nespresso in Switzerland from Nestle is actually working on that technology. And also, you will be sooner or later asked by your insurance provider, if you give them access to your data of your wearables, they will reduce the cost of insurance. It's going to be a big decision for you to make, but if you see a benefit out of that, trust me, more than 50% of the population will do that. The last trend, and then Ada, I'm taking off. Infrastructure free ride. I think all of you remember Skype. Skype or WhatsApp. It's a complete infrastructure free ride business model because they sit on the technology and infrastructure of Turkcell, Deutsche Telekom, AT&T, and use that basically for free via internet access. And that's something that's really difficult for the old industry. And also when you start thinking about a new business idea, infrastructure free ride, use industry which are heavily cost and investment intensive of infrastructure and put a layer on top of it. Just access it, but don't do those investments. It's a very smart move. And I give you one example. This is a bit Germanic, but we have seen it also in other countries when you go to the US. Most of the global banking system have highly complicated routing information to your account. And I've never really understood why neither in Turkey, Germany, and the US, you cannot use your name or your email address as your account number. I mean, what's so difficult about that you actually can remember this? Well, what basically happened is WeChat, and Facebook is doing it also, has basically used a chat engine. And in 2013, in January, they have given they call this the New Year's gift, a send to those customers who wanted to onboard their account to the chat service. And guess what? 200 million Chinese were onboarded in January 2013 to actually transfer money in the future via their chat engine. Just they see your face or your name, you transfer your money over there. 200 million in a month. That's probably the biggest onboarding process I've ever seen. What do? They use existing infrastructure. They pay zero Zippo money for that. And the banks sit there with all the regulations, with all the problems provided to that on a huge infrastructure, and they don't even feel what's coming from outside. Well, anyway, so these are the 8 trends. They change on a 6-monthly basis. So if Ada is inviting me again next year, I'll tell you probably it's going to change again. Well, thank you very much.